Hello and welcome back to the official Pixel V lighting tutorial. Last video we made this scene right here. While using Mineways in like the past hour, I realized that Mineways uses a extreme amount of RAM, and OBS also uses a decent amount of RAM. So I was like, I really don't want my computer to blue screen right now, because I feel like there's a possibility that it could. So I'm risking it right now. I'm gonna do a little bit of risky play here by opening Mineways. But I'm gonna see if I can do this. This is gonna be a risky play. I'm gonna have my task manager open on my second monitor at all times during this entire section of the video. Alright, so Mineways is a software that you can download. Website in the description. I guess I'll just put it in there. So you have this empty thing going on here, and what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to go to File, Open World, and this immediately links up to your Minecraft saves. Oh, I probably shouldn't be revealing all those worlds. It links up to your Minecraft saves like thing. It links up to your saves, so you'll have this. It will show a bunch of saves. It just chooses a random amount of saves. You can't actually really do anything about it. You can kind of go up and down it. I don't know how I did that. If you can't find it, you can always click at the very top. Why does it keep doing that? Okay, you can always just I think there's open. If you use open, you can just find the world manually, but if it's over here, you should be fine. For me, it is over here. I have a world called Lighting Tut World, which I will now proceed to open. And this is the part where it uses a billion RAM. Oh, it actually opened. Alright, so once you have your world open here, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the area in which you want to export, which if you don't know where it is, I usually put markers in the actual world. You see this little thing made out of magenta wool. I use these as markers to mark stuff. If you don't want to mark something, you can always just leave the world right where you want to export. Like if you want to like you can just leave the world, like, and your player is currently the area in which you want to export in, and then you can go to view, jump to player, and it will jump to where your player model last was. I actually did. I logged off of the world like right next to the magenta platform that's floating in the sky. So it just jumps me right to here. So then what you're going to want to do, you can move around by left click dragging, and you can zoom in and out. So you're going to want to hold right click and drag until you get this huge pink box that kind of goes across your screen. And you're going to get this pop-up. It says some of your blocks in your selection are visible below the current depth of 62. So what this is going to do is if you press yes, it'll automatically take all the blocks that are in your current view and make it so that the depth is set to the current view. So what this depth slider does is this essentially tells you how low is this thing going to render blocks. If you didn't know already, 62 is Minecraft's water level. So 62 is where the water block is. If you go above this, you'll notice the terrain starts to deload as it goes out of the render. So it set this number to 51, meaning that all blocks that are visible from the top down perspective are somewhere between 255 and 51, which is a pretty good distance, honestly, because I normally would set this to a much lower number, but we don't have to here, since we're in a relatively open area. Now, if you wanted to capture a cave or an underground area, which I will actually be using in this video, you're going to want to put this to a much lower value, and if you want to make it a little bit faster on your end, you could actually lower this number to a much lower number, to the point where it would start cutting out the ground. I know this looks really cool. It's really cool to just watch this. Yeah, but anyway, you would basically lower it to the point where it's like at 62 or something, and then you would just export the cave and only the cave. So once you have your selection set up, you can basically go over to File and then do Export for Rendering, and then you choose a location where you want to save this file and you give it a name. I named mine Field, and you hit Save. I'm gonna pretend to save this, but I'm not actually gonna save it. You hit Save, and it's going to pull up this menu, and this menu, you only want to uncheck one thing. There's a huge menu of like data. There's only one thing that you want to worry about, and that's this thing here, create block faces at the borders. You want to turn that off. Essentially what that does is that basically it would render block faces at the edge of the map, which is just rendering extra faces that you're not going to need. So I just like to turn that off just so you render less faces overall. And I'm not actually going to export this, but you would. And then a little progress bar would show up on the bottom, and then at the very end, your thing would be exported. So I'm actually going to quickly go ahead and open up an empty scene, which is this scene that I've already pre-set up for this exact purpose. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead to File, Import, Wave Font, or .obj, which is the file format that we exported with Mineways. We call them object files, or the extension is .obj. So I'm going to take the .obj called field, and I'm going to import it. Now this can sometimes take a while. Sometimes Blender will stop responding. It normally does. Don't worry about it if it does. It happens every time. Alright, and then you'll see it'll go ahead and export the map, the Minecraft map, just right into my scene. And this is just the world I had set up. It's the exact world that you guys just saw in Mineways, except now you can actually see it, that it's in Blender. So we're going to be doing some lighting with this today. I'm not going to be delving too much into materials, because materials is going to be starting to talk about like the third video. Third video is going to be the material video. This is going to be focusing on just lighting and pretty much nothing else. The only noding we're really going to be doing today is the world background noding, because we're going to need to do a little bit of that for this video. So you'll notice now that all the colors are completely blinding now. That is because I just switched my color management over to Aces, which I am not going to explain how to install because it's kind of a complicated process, a lot more complicated than the Mineways process is. So I'm just going to link a video in the description on how to get yourself Aces. It's essentially a color manager in Blender that allows you to have a lot wider color range and a lot wider lighting range, which Filmic provides a lot wider lighting range, but not so much with the contrast with the colors. So Aces provides both of those, which makes it superior to both standard and Filmic combined. So I'll leave a link in the description to that video, and also in the info card that's about to show up in like 2 seconds. That'll link you to a video on how to go ahead and quickly install Aces. The only real fundamental difference that Aces makes to Blender is that the lighting values are slightly different, and instead of having like 2 or 3 settings under color management, you have like a billion. Instead of having like 4 or 5 settings on this drop down menu, you have like way too many. So you're probably wondering, how exactly do you fix these colors? Because like these colors, they don't look like the right colors to me. I'm looking at these right now. These don't look like the right colors. Well, there's a very easy fix to this. You can head over to the shading workspace, which we used in the last video, and you can go ahead and go to the materials of this this giant object, which has a crap ton of materials, but it doesn't actually matter. You only have to worry about one. So you go to one material, and here you'll notice that there are 2 .pngs, field RGB and field RGBA. So you want to go ahead and go to field RGB and change it from this weird color space. You're going to want to locate the color space that is titled sRGB texture. You're going to have to like squint to read this font. I've like memorized where its location is. It's like over to the right, and it's like either at the bottom or the very top. It's called sRGB texture, and if you click it, it'll go ahead and fix all those colors for you. You notice it didn't fix every color. That's because we have to go ahead and change the other image too. From the RGBA image, you can just quickly switch to it and go ahead and switch that to sRGB. And now all the colors are fixed. Now I don't want to get too much into materials because, you know, I'm going to save that for the third video. But to quickly set up these materials so that, you know, this whole transparency thing going on here isn't happening, and also the images aren't super blurry, we're just going to quickly use an add-on called MC Prep. Now, I'm going to regret showing you this later because we're going to reset all the materials in the node video, but just for the purpose of making the lighting in this video, I'm gonna show you how to use this add-on. So I'll just leave a link to the download. I'm not gonna tell you how to install add-ons because you either already know how to do that or you can figure it out by yourself. I'm gonna go ahead and quickly install the add-on myself. So now that that whole technical difficulty episode is finally out of the way, we can finally actually do lighting. So I like to actually do lighting in my shading, like workspace, like all lighting. Like I know the last video I did lighting here, but I pretty much do all my lighting in this workspace. Oh yeah, let me just quickly show you how to remove these magenta targets. If you actually did put markers on your world, the easy way to remove it is to just press tab, which will open edit mode for the entire map. Make sure you're in face mode. Select the face of the block, and it turns out it's the wool block, so you just want to hit select, and it will select all the wool blocks in the scene, and you can just delete faces, and it will just get rid of them. As long as your marker isn't connected to any other block, you want to make sure that they're completely in the air, because if they're connected to another block, it'll also create a hole in the ground, and you don't want that. So you make your markers completely in the air, not touching any other blocks, so that when you remove them, there's absolutely no trace that they ever existed. So let's go ahead. If you go into render viewport right now, you are greeted by just this blank scene lighting with no proper lighting. The lava has some emission on it because it has emission by default, but we're going to get back into emission in the node video. So we're going to go ahead and add ourselves a sun lamp because we're in an outdoor scene. There's going to be the sun. Sun's obviously going to be a part of the render. So let's go ahead and add ourselves the sun lamp. And in rendered viewport, I'm going to actually mess around with this a little bit. In rendered viewport, let me check my samples. Yeah, they're all good. I'm going to angle this a little bit so it's a little angled on the X. I'll angle it on the Z as well. And I'm going to bump up the strength up to 6. And we get ourselves a decent amount of light coming from this sun lamp. Now, like I said, with outdoor scenes, setting your light paths on the diffuse doesn't really have to be set to that high of a number, because after the lights bounce off of the floor, they go straight into oblivion. If you really want to, you can put this number up to 2, but I normally don't ever put the light bounces for diffuse higher than 1 for outdoor scenes, because it really isn't necessary to be any higher. I usually set the subsample on the sun lamp up to 2, so the lamp renders a little bit more smoothly. And you have yourself pretty basic sun lighting. This is pretty much all you do in terms of lamps for outdoor lighting. Like for outdoor lighting specifically, this is pretty much all you do for lamps. It's just the sun lamp pretty much. The majority of the lighting is what you do in the world node space, which we're about to get into. Now, about people who like to make their suns have a kind of a yellow tint in their renders. Unless you're doing a sunset or a sunrise, it is not, and it doesn't make any sense to make your sun lamp slightly yellow. Because when the sun is in the middle of the sky and it's not at the horizon at all, if it's just in the middle of the sky, it is not yellow. It is completely white. Unless it is at the horizon, unless your sun is angled like here, and you have yourself a sunset / sunrise angle going on, and you have to make it a red or pinkish tint depending on whether or not it's sun or sunset or sunrise. If it's here at an angle where it's like the middle of the day, it is going to be white. I just want to make that clear. It is going to be completely white. There's going to be no tint to the sun here. So let's go ahead and open that world space, node space, which you open by going down here from object and switching it to world. Which I talked about this, I brought this up briefly in the first video, but we didn't do much with it, because we didn't really need to. So it has a background setup, which is just, it's a solid color, controls the background, and this is the strength of the background. Now if I were to put this up to a really high number, it would affect everything in the scene, so the world background definitely affects the lighting in the scene. We can confirm that with that number. So how do we make the lighting, the lighting in the sky look good? Well, luckily, Blend Cycles has a node called Sky Texture, which we can plug right into the background, and it creates a little bit of a sky texture. Now, the default sky texture, the Hosic Wickley, is it's a very ugly sky texture. I usually set it to the other one, Prethiem, which is much better looking. It's just an overall, it's just a better sky texture. Now, one of the things I do, unless the sun is directly in the shot, because the sky texture actually creates a sun object in the sky, which I like to actually I like to angle myself right where the angle of the sun lamp is. It's like right here. And then I like to reposition the sun on the sky texture node to match up with the sun lamp in the scene, so that matches up perfectly with the sun. So one of the annoying parts about the sky texture is that the horizon line happens way too early. As you can see, the sky gets gray way too fast. So a good way to counter this is by adding a mapping setup where you just add a mapping node followed by a texture coordinate node and putting the geometry that generated into the vector, and then going ahead and just setting this number up to like 0.3. Now the horizon line thing's kind of fixed, and the blue sky actually starts where it's supposed to. The one problem with this is that it kind of creates a giant gaping hole in the sky. So the way to counter this is that if I have a shot where the horizon line is in sight, I keep this at 0.3, but if the camera ever points up to where the sky is, I keyframe this value to go back to 0 when it's going back to the sky. And then when it looks back at the ground, I'll keyframe it back to 0.3. That's kind of how you counter that. And interestingly enough, that's pretty much all you do for outdoor lighting. It's just a sun lamp and a sky texture. Now, obviously, there is more to it. You do stuff with compositing, but besides compositing, this is pretty much all you do. So let me just like add a camera to the scene, and you can just straight up render this. You can just straight up render this scene. I'll pick a part where the map isn't too obvious. The edge of the map isn't too obvious. I'll pick a shot like, be like right here. And we'll just render it at 4 samples. Does 4 samples seem good? Let's see. Let's actually do our little optimization thing. 4 samples seems pretty good. Might want to turn the diffuse subsample up by 1. And then we go over to the rendering tab, just hit that big old F12 button, and it'll go ahead and render your frame. Now, you'd be surprised at how fast it actually renders, especially if your map is really small like mine is. Mine's a pretty small map. If I was actually doing a project-based thing, the map would definitely not be this small. But for the sake of this being the tutorial, it's going to be small. So this will actually render pretty fast if you have a good GPU like me. But even if you don't have like a really good GPU, this still renders pretty fast for Blender, relatively speaking. So that's always good to know. And like I said, if you have the ACES thing set up, your color range will look a lot better, and you'll notice the colors in your scene will look a lot more vibrant and a lot more eye-popping than they would with the default look. And that pretty much wraps up outdoor lighting for the most part. Outdoor lighting is probably the most basic lighting out of the 3 lightings we're doing here. So let's hop on over to my indoor lighting scene, which is going to be a cave. I have a little bit of a cave shot going on here. I forgot to add torches in the set. I was supposed to add torches to this cave. I completely forgot to add torches, so I'm gonna actually import my own torches from the rig pack that I use. All right, so I went ahead and set up all the materials with the the linear image texture thing. Like I had to do all that manually again. And then I set up a few torches in the scene. There's 4 total. There's 2 here and 2 over here. And we're gonna go ahead and light up this cave scene. Now, since this entire set is entirely cave, there's actually almost no surface here at all. There's a few grass blocks over there, but the majority of this entire set is just completely underground. We're not going to be adding a sun lamp at all. So first things first, in order to do this lighting, we're going to be doing a little bit of noting on the torch material. We're going to change this from an emission node to a translucent node. Make sure it's translucent and not transparent. It should have a normal output if it's translucent. The transparent one will not have one. If you did Alt D instead of Shift D to duplicate the objects, it should apply this material to all your torches. If you used Mineways to export with the torches, the entire torch will be one material. So I recommend either getting the Boxscape Boxscape rig pack, which I'll also link in the description, which has this torch model. It's not the best rig pack in the world, but it's something. It's a good way to get assets for the game really easily. So right now, the only thing in the scene that is actually emitting light is this lava over here, which we actually haven't even given a proper emission material. We're going to be doing that in the 3rd video, the node video. In fact, since we're in an indoor scene, we actually are going to bump up those light paths numbers. We're going to bump up both the diffuse and the glossy, both up to 4, which should increase the range in which the lights will be able to bounce, and I'll actually demonstrate that in a second when we're making this lighting. So I'm going to keep these at 4 for now, for the sake of the lighting that we're going to be doing. So you won't be able to see anything, so we're actually going to be doing this lighting in the material viewport for now. So we're going to go ahead and add a lamp, a point lamp, and we're going to use the cursor. If you don't know how to use the cursor, you can just hold Shift and right click, and then you can just do Shift S, and there's this menu. So pretty simple stuff. So you set the cursor, you put it right inside of this torch, like right inside of where the flame would be. Let's actually go into render viewport and look at the lamp itself. So the lamp is lighting up not a very good portion of the wall right now. So let's go ahead and bump up this number to a much higher number, like 100. Alright, so now you can see it's lighting up a good portion of the wall now. Still not a lot of the wall is being lit up though. You'd think that a torchlight would be lighting up a lot more than this, so let's bump that number up once again to 200. Alright, now it's actually lighting up a good, decent area of the scene. You notice we're getting a lot of fireflies now, but that's something we'll get into later. A lot of fireflies being caused by indirect lighting, and also not finished materials, which we'll get into in video 3. But you'll notice that now there's this really big highlight. There's this huge highlight that's just on the torch, and it's really blinding. It's exposing the entire texture. You can barely even see the stone right next to the torch. So how do we combat this? Well, if you've gained any knowledge from the previous video, you would know to turn the size of the lamp up to get rid of that giant bulging hotspot. You might even want to make it a little bigger than this, because even with this, there seems to be that hotspot there. So you want to just keep increasing it until that hotspot kind of disappears. And then, like I said, whenever you increase the size, the strength also goes down. So to compensate for the strength being down, you're going to also want to increase this number once again. And by doing that, we actually have a pretty decent torch lamp going on here. And we're going to want to turn the subsample on this a little higher, so we can it actually renders the lamp a lot more cleanly. And we're going to want to give this lamp a nice yellow-orange tint. so that it fits the theme of a torch. Keep messing with this color until I get something that I like. That seems like torchlight. So now we're going to go ahead and back into this viewport, and we're going to use Alt-D to duplicate this lamp and put it onto the other three torches. And by doing that, we've actually decently lit the scene. The cave is now actually pretty well lit for the most part. You can see most of the scenery around us, and at any given moment you can change the torchlight. Let's say you didn't like how the torchlight was being lit and you want it to be even brighter. You could just change one of these values and it will apply it to all 4 torches. But at the moment, I think 500, maybe like 550 is a pretty good number because we're getting a decent amount of light being spread across the room. Now let me actually go back to that light path value. Let me show you the difference between 4 and 1 bounce. So we go back to 1 bounce. You'll notice that the lighting itself looks pretty relatively the same, but you'll notice that some areas are a lot darker than they should be, like areas around the corners of blocks, because they don't have, the light doesn't have room to bounce in those corners. By upping these numbers, light has the freedom to bounce in those corners, so the corners are a lot less isolated and therefore a lot less dark. Here we're not going to be using the world background nodes at all because we don't need to. This is located completely inside and there is no world background in sight. Unlike in the next scenery where we're going to have to use the world background and indoor lighting combined, which I'll be getting to in a second. The last thing we're going to want to implement into this scene is the AO, which is a thing you can find in the worlds panel over here. And you turn it on and it will just generate light seamlessly out of nowhere. Now you don't want this value to be too high because then it creates an unrealistic amount of light that you're never going to really use. So you're going to keep this number at a relatively low value, maybe like 0.3 or 0.2, not 2, 0.2. So you get a decent amount of ambient light being generated, but overall not too much disruption going on with the actual lighting to cause a difference. You just want to make those dark areas, those darker areas that are just a little bit too dark, just a little bit brighter with this brief lighting boost that you can give it. And the last thing I want to do is, bump up those subsamples, bump up diffuse, and just keep bumping up the subsamples. Maybe bump up the AO subsample so that the ambient inclusion renders a little bit more well. Maybe bump up the mesh light sample so that the lava renders a little bit more cleanly. And once you get the subsamples to a relatively high number, a number that you like, you might want to actually turn the render samples themselves up a little bit. You might have to do that. You might have to do lots of different things. But once you get the scene looking the way you like it, you can go ahead and add your camera again. Position it in a way that looks cool to your liking. So for here, I'm going to basically get this angle kind of going with the lava kind of in the frame. Might want to mess with the focal length on the camera. On the camera settings, there's a thing called focal length where you can mess with the field of view. I'm going to lower this to 35 so I can see a little bit more. Basically get kind of like this angle right here. Pretty decent shot of the lava and the torch. And we're going to go ahead and render the scene. Now this is actually an indoor scene. Indoor scenes are historically, quote unquote, historically known to take a lot longer than outdoor scenes, simply because there's a lot more happening in the scene, lot more light to be rendered than there is on the outdoor scenes. So you have yourself pretty decent cave lighting going on here. Nothing too out of the ordinary, nothing too advanced yet. Pretty basic cave lighting. Might even want to turn the AO up a little bit. I feel like it's not having a big enough of an effect on the overall render. And there you have it. You have yourself, indoor lighting without any windows. Alright, so you have yourself a set. I just had gathered a witch hut, which, fun fact, when I was actually doing the /locate command to find this witch hut, there just so happened to be an obsidian ruins, a new 1.16 structure, just kind of sitting here. Was not expecting to find one of these right next to a witch hut, but it happened, so that was pretty interesting. So we got ourselves a witch hut. This is the important part where I'm going to be demonstrating how to make indoor lighting with outdoor with like windows at the same time. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to actually basically create the outdoor setup that we had in the very first one, because you're going to need outdoor lighting to make indoor lighting with windows in it. So I'm going to quickly, just create a very simple sun lamp setup. Basically give it a little bit of an angle. And then we're going to go into the render viewport. Set the strength up to 6. Get a pretty good angle, pretty good going, and then we're going to go to that world setup. Gonna put that sky texture back in. Set it to that. Put that back on. Go ahead and do that mapping setup thing that we did in the first one. We have ourselves a decent setup for outdoor lighting. See, outdoor lighting you can do relatively quickly once you get pretty good at it. So we're going to go inside the witch hut for this. I'm going to turn my focal length down so I can see more. So we're going to go inside the witch hut for this. And inside the witch hut, going to turn our light bounces up to 4 so that the light will bounce more on the inside. And you'll notice that obviously there's not a lot of light that's actually shining into the witch hut. The problem is the witch hut has no natural light source. So let's go ahead and actually add one. I'm going to go ahead and add that torch model again. We're going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to change the transmission to a transparent. No, what did I just say? Emission to transparent. I don't know why I said transmission. We're going to go ahead and place this singular torch. I don't know, where should we put it? Let's place it on this side of the wall. Kind of give it a little bit of an angle, kind of locate it inside the wall. Let's go ahead and give it a lamp. And do kind of like the same lamp settings we did last time. We're going to put the inside the torch. Going to set the size to 1.5, so it's nice and big. Going to put this up to 2, and then putting this to 500. And by doing that, we'll get a decent amount of light inside the actual witch hut. We're going to give it a little bit of a tint, so it's actually like render this out. But obviously you'll notice while looking at this alone, while the lighting on the inside of the house is pretty okay, you'll notice that despite the fact that it is completely daytime outside, it looks like the inside is in a nighttime scene, even though the outside is in a daytime scene. This is like a common problem that people face when they're doing indoor lighting with windows, is that you'll have indoor lighting, but the windows don't appear to be shining any light inside the house at all. Despite there being holes in the sides of the windows, none of that light seems to be coming through. So we can counter this with a lamp that I didn't go over in the first video, which was the area lamp portal setting, which you can basically change a lamp, an area lamp. Whoops, I faced that the wrong way. It's supposed to be facing inside. Basically, you can make a portal, an area lamp into a portal lamp by checking this box here, and will basically disable every setting on the lamp, and now this lamp will act as a portal lamp. And now basically you take this lamp and make it the size of the window, or make it the size of the hole in which light will be coming through. And basically what this lamp does is this lamp takes all of the outside lighting data and points it inside. So you would like put this at the edge of the hole, and it points all the data from the light out here and basically funnels it through here, so that the lighting from the outside, instead of bouncing everywhere else, will actually go directly into the witch hut via this portal lamp. And you're going to actually want to go ahead and you're going to want to add portal lamps to all openings in the witch hut. And you won't notice a noticeable change immediately, but since this set is so tiny, I think the change might actually be noticeable. There's a chance that it will. See, the portal lamp doesn't really make that much of an impact in the rendered viewport. The main noticeable difference is when you actually do the final render. The final render, there is a very noticeable difference in what it does. It basically makes the inside a lot less noisy, and it kind of funnels that that light inside. So there's one last thing that we're going to do, and that's something that you wouldn't expect us to do, but it's something that cameras do that makes indoor lighting important. And that's something called the IOR value. Now, when you have a camera pointing on something outside where it's really bright, you know how bright outside is, obviously, because it's the outside. What it will do is it will take this value called the IOR and basically adjust the gain of everything around so that you can see the things inside or outside. When you go inside, it has to make the gain a lot higher so that you can actually see on the inside of the building, because otherwise it would just be completely pitch black in here. And by turning the gain up on the inside, it is also turning the gain up on the outside, meaning the outside gets a lot brighter. This is a very, very important thing to take into account when doing indoor lighting with windows. I'm actually going to quickly pull up a phone recording I made as I'm explaining how IOR works, so I can actually like visually demonstrate what I'm talking about. It's a thing that cameras do, and you also have to do it in virtual lighting. So how exactly do we simulate this? Well, it's actually fairly easy. You just make the world background a lot brighter. By making the world background a lot brighter, you essentially have upped that gain value to a much higher number. Now you can keep upping the strength on the world background until you feel like the inside is bright enough. You just keep going until you feel like the inside is getting lit up enough by the outside exterior areas. If you want to, you don't technically have to, but if you want to, you can also turn up the sun lamp strength to get extra light bounces of that. I don't technically have to know. Now the outside looks completely blinding, but from the perspective of the inside, it looks completely normal, because this is what you'd expect the inside of a house to look like if the IRL levels are allowing you to see inside. And that's essentially the trick to getting this indoor lighting thing to look good. So if we just pick a little camera angle here, I'm gonna make the focal length really low on this one. Let's see a little bit more. If you're wondering how I do this, I go to the camera settings and viewport display, pass out. I just turn this to 1 so you can't see past the borders. And let's go ahead and optimize our sample count here. So our sample count, it's pretty noisy at the moment, but that's just because we haven't put our sample counts up. So let's put the subsample up to 2 on the diffuse. Obviously that's not doing a lot, so probably should put the glossy up to 2 as well, because there's a lot of reflection happening here. I'm probably going to have to put the overall samples up to 6 even, maybe even 8. Actually, I'm probably going to have to go with 8 on this one. This one's actually going to be pretty darn high. Maybe I have to put the diffuse up to 3 even. This is indoor lighting with the windows is probably some of the most highest samples you will ever need for a render. Might even actually, let's actually put the light paths on the diffuse even higher to get even more light path action going on the inside here. Maybe even bump up the diffuse or the glossy as well. Get the maximum amount of bounce action going on here. Now, you're seeing this like lots of blue light. This blue light's coming from the water. When we actually create proper materials, we'll get rid of that blue light. That blue light really shouldn't be there. And now we're gonna go ahead and actually render the image that we just created. Indoor lighting with windows. Probably one of the most complicated things in all of lighting. Now you'll see the outside looks freakishly, it looks way too bright, but you'll notice that from the perspective of the inside, it actually doesn't look all that bad, because from the inside, you'd expect the outside to look bright. Like, you'd think that by making the world background a lot brighter, you're making unrealistic lighting, but if you look at this render, there's actually not a lot wrong with what's going on here. In fact, I actually completely forgot a value that we probably should have messed with. I completely forgot that ambient inclusion is a thing. We should probably go ahead and turn that on and set the factor to a relatively low number. AO subsample up. Heck, I might even turn this number even higher. I don't think the background's actually doing enough. Oh yeah. Now we're getting some background action going on here. That I think that's gonna be the final render of this video. So we got ourselves some outdoor lighting, some indoor lighting, some indoor lighting with windows. We did all of the really basic lighting today. And in the next video, I will be showing you how to make materials, aka how to make the blocks look a lot less boring than this very boring looking water, and actually make the blocks have a unique look. Like you see, this crafting table is made of wood, but this cauldron's made of like metal. Shouldn't they look different? Well, right now they look the same. That's what the next video is going to be about, how to make each block look unique in its appearance. Which you do using materials, which materials are run by nodes. That's why I'm calling it nodes. So video 3 is going to be about nodes. It's going to be probably the longest video in the entire video series. So without further ado, it is 1:39 in the morning. I need to sleep. I've been recording this for a while because I ran into a lot of technical difficulties I didn't expect to. So I'll see you guys in video 3. Adios. I have no idea why I said that in Spanish.